And we can say this together. We recognise the city's considerable natural and cultural heritage, including thousands of years of traditional ownership by Ghana, and the more recent contribution from people either born here or who have migrated here. As we meet together, we build on this heritage by respecting and listening to each other, thinking clearly, being receptive to new ideas, speaking honestly, and deciding wisely for the current and future well-being of those we serve. Thanks, everyone. So we have the discretionary rebate, item 2.1. Do I have a mover, please? I don't know what's going on up here. There's straight to the floor.
You've got an alternative?
There's nothing flashing here either. Control. Your button now, please. Yes, it is working. Thank you, everyone. Sorry about that. Councillor Wilkes, are you moving this?
Yes, please. And I'd like to move with the amendments on the screen, with the changes on the screen, sorry.
Thank you. Do you wish to speak to this motion?
I will quickly, briefly, just on point 2, that the council included detailed, and I just missed the ED there. Thank you. I'll speak really briefly to this and then let the debate happen and then talk about it more. But just when we were discussing this last week and it came up, we did actually mention, and I did ask quite a few questions around the process and the policy of how we are offering these discretionary rebates. And it really occurred to me, not last week, but last financial year, that we need to look at this process. And the point 2 and point 3 have endeavoured to do that. So.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Eaton, are you seconding the motion?
Yes, I'm happy to second it. No need to discuss it.
Thank you. Councillor Platten.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm happy to speak to it. I think the general consensus of the chamber was not to remove discretionary rebates, and it was my error in moving. But I also think there was a great deal of discussion around how we move forward in the policy of discretionary rebates, and I think this has allowed a conversation to occur which probably wouldn't have until August. So I think at this point in time, I feel very comfortable with what's been moved.
Thank you. Councillor Pritchard.
Just debate, thank you.
Go ahead.
Just probably mirroring the comments. I think it's fantastic that we're now having this conversation about discretionary rebates. I think it's appropriate that these are not considered indefinitely once you receive a rebate, that it goes on forever. So I think that policy really needs to be looked at. And I think it's really important that we ask the question as to whether the ratepayers really want to be subsidising this in this way, or if they're looking for their services, their money to be spent towards services.
Thank you. Any further questions? Debate. Councillor Wilkes, would you like to close? Can you press your button, please? Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just quickly briefly say that this is discretionary rebates, and my focus, once we turn our attention to this in August, we'll actually be looking at the mandatory rebates, because trying to figure out how we can see how, because there's a huge portion of them. So thank you.
I look forward to our conversation with state government on that one. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. Thank you. Now that concludes our meeting number 1. Our second meeting is scheduled to begin at 6. This is the special council meeting, our second one for the 25th of June 2004. We have no apologies, no leave of absence, and as we've taken the pledge just a few moments ago, I'm going to assume that you would all be able to stick to it for this meeting as well. We have the first item, item 2.1, and before we open that item, I'm going to just ask if there are any declarations of conflict of interest. Councillor Pritchard.
I'm declaring a material conflict of interest. I own a house that's on the CWS system, and yeah, due to that reason, and in the chamber.
And your form's up here. Thank you very much. Councillor Platinum.
I'm also declaring a material conflict of interest. I own a property which is on CWMS. I have a direct and pecuniary implication. I'll be leaving the chamber.
Thank you. Councillor Greaves.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I too would like to declare a material conflict of interest. As a homeowner who is currently on the CWMS system, decisions made particularly around the service charge for this particular service means that I actually have a material conflict and will be leaving the chamber.
And your form's up here too. So thank you very much. Councillor Yeomans.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. I'd like to declare a general conflict of interest. I've got some notes and some commentary that I've attached to the form that, with your permission, I would like to read.
Go ahead.
To explain my reasons for that. I live in Maslin Beach and am a CWMS customer. I appreciate and thank staff for providing the advice on this matter. I've given that due consideration. That advice addresses section 75A subsection D, but in considering this matter, I've also considered section 75A subsection 1 part A. Section 75 of the Local Government Act addresses the topic of material conflicts of interest. Section 75A addresses exemptions and other matters. Subsection 1, and I'll read, a member of council will not be regarded as having a conflict of interest in a matter to be discussed at a meeting of the council. A, if the interest is held in common with a substantial portion of the ratepayers, electors or residents of the council area and does not materially exceed the interest held by the other ratepayers, electors or residents. I was required to consider and comply with legislation and internal policies throughout my 42-year policing career. And what you always need to come back to is what is the intent of such legislation and policy, and applying the legislation and policy in context. In matters relating to conflict of interest of a financial nature, I would consider the intent of this legislation would be to prevent an elected member's involvement in or manipulating a process whereby they will be receiving considerable financial gain, most likely from a commercial perspective. This comes down to the principle of representing my community, to deliberate over a matter, to be present here in the chamber while this is debated and voted on. The area where I live in Maslin Beach is totally reliant on the CWMS scheme. This is obviously a substantial portion of the ratepayers. From a rural perspective in the South Coast, I also represent nearly 400 households in the Selix Beach area. This equates to over 1,000 households to represent, and this is a sizable and considerable proportion of the ward I represent. One of the reasons I was elected was on a platform that included public assets in public ownership. At that time, the divestment of council's water assets, including the CWMS, was a hot topic on the council's agenda in the lead up to the council elections. It's fair to conclude that in light of my election commitments, a high proportion of these households supported me in the election. Considering that just over 20% of electors vote in council elections, again it's fair to conclude that a high percentage of these electors were CWMS customers, particularly in Maslin Beach. Nearly finished. The issue of removing the CWMS rebate is an issue that has been a significant and very controversial topic of discussion since the draft budget was released for public consultation. I have attended recently public meetings in both Maslin Beach and Selix Beach that between them have attracted approximately 120 residents.
Excuse me, Councillor, those later points you've just raised are a little more in debate space than around the conflict of interest. You might want to consider editing what you want to say next.
Well, that wasn't the intention, so I apologize.
No, I don't think that wasn't the intention. So I just want to make sure that you're sticking to the principle of the conflict of interest.
I'll just go back to the last public hearing, but it's all in the notes here anyway.
Appreciate it.
I place my overall duty over my personal interests, and as I continue to perform my role as best I can, as described under oath, as a representative to serve the community. In this matter, I would feel guilty if I was not here to represent very strong views held by my community over this issue. They would be expecting me to represent them here tonight, and after very careful consideration, I conclude this responsibility far outweighs any financial impact on the retention or removal of the onward $340 CWMS rebate. That all said, in the interest of transparency, I'm prepared to declare a general conflict of interest and will stay to debate and vote on the matter.
Thank you, councillor. And we have that information up here?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do
I have a mover for the motion? Councillor Fisher.
Yeah, Mayor, I'll move the motion as written.
Do you wish to speak to the motion?
No.
Seconding? Councillor Bell.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I support the motion and I'm happy to debate. Go ahead. Councillors, I support this motion in its entirety. It is a difficult, I recognise that for some it may be a difficult decision. And there are members of the community who I acknowledge who are in the chamber tonight, that obviously have raised concerns with us, either personally or at the meeting or through emails, and possibly even during some of the listening posts that were held recently during the budget when it was out on the Your Say. I thank everyone again for those who reached out. However, I support removal of the rebate because I believe it's the next step and a responsible step, given the decision that we made as a chamber last year, November 14th. This decision cannot be explained without knowing and understanding, of course, some of that background. The decision the chamber made was to not privatise our water assets, was based on a consultation with community that goes back to at least 2018, if not sooner. The former chamber obviously went out to a Your Say twice, and of course there was also a community group workshop that looked into both privatisation and retaining the assets. And overwhelmingly, all the consultation came back with not supporting privatisation for the reasons given that it's known that with privatisation, services and fees would be increasing in costs overall. And essentially that was why at the time we made that decision. It's also important to understand, and I know it's all in the papers, but important to mention the amount of rebate that is being removed is $342.92 per customer, or if you like, $85.73 a quarter. It's important to note that hardship arrangements are available should people require assistance of any kind. It's a difficult decision that we've made, but it's a next step, as I mentioned. Removing the rebate supports ongoing future capital requirements for the CWMS, as well as aligning, of course, to the long-term financial plan principles and returning us to a balanced budget and maintaining a surplus position going forward. The council has resolved to advocate also, it's important to notice, to SA Water as the decision was made on the 14th of November last year, but also going forward from then, we've had many discussions here in this chamber looking to advocate further for the possibility of SA Water taking on management of the system. So I think that's all I'll say. I think it was, for me, it was important to highlight some of those points. In particularly, I'm saddened that some feel that somehow we haven't been listening. I'm saddened to think that and feel that some people are feeling that we are not doing what the community want. But please, for those who are listening out there and in the chamber, is that we have been listening, and it wasn't that long ago.
On your time, Councillor.
Thank you. It wasn't that long ago the community were, of course, opposing privatisation, lobbying elected members to retain. And of course, we had
Councillor, sorry, your time's up. Councillor Themiologus.
Yes, I will debate. And I appreciate the very respectful debate and the decisions that elected members are going to be making around this chamber. First of all, I want to acknowledge the impact of rising utility costs for our CWMS customers who are already facing high inflation costs. The matter's made worse when we take away the 300 plus rebate that was mentioned before, a small but significant relief for those households. The rebate is essential, and it helps prop up, it's not essential, it's actually just propping up our budget, which is putting further strain on our residents. The reason why I struggle to support this motion and unable to support this motion is because back in November, I moved a motion around CWMS, which was around stopping the sale, which was around initiating an advocacy plan, which was around having a plan that was going to come to this chamber with an approach to moving towards full cost recovery or removal of the rebate. And this chamber made that motion public. And the reason why we made that motion public is because we wanted to give confidence in our community that we were listening. We wanted our community to trust us. And the feeling I'm getting from residents in Maslins Beach at the meeting we had and residents in Clarendon at the meeting they had is they've actually lost trust in council and trust in elected members. I really struggle with making a notice of motion public to relieve some of that strain and anxiety that residents had and not enact any of that motion besides stopping divestment. That's the only part of the motion that was acted on. So in good faith and good conscience, and to give some faith back into those residents, we need to go back and address that notice of motion from November before we even get to this stage. So elected members, I will not be supporting this motion, but I respect everyone's decision around this chamber. Thank you.
Councillor Yeomans.
Just a debate, if I can, please.
Go ahead.
What we're deciding tonight is whether or not to charge CWS customers an additional $340 an annum on top of an approximate $140 increase in their general rates. Clearly, as demonstrated by the CWS financials that were provided to us yesterday, the additional revenue is required to run this service. But where is the public engagement and information on this? We've all essentially communicated, all we've done essentially is to communicate to the public is that we can charge this fee and we're going to do it. There's been no rationale provided to the public. We still don't know how this rebate amount is calculated, and yet we are considering charging this fee. I must say it's nice to finally have clarity on the income generated through the CWS charges will only be directed to CWS-related activities and services. Only yesterday we received the financial position of the CWS over a number of years, and clearly looking at that, when we're running a deficit in that business since 2015-16 and since 2011-2012, the CWS system owes the council over $8 million. Clearly, there's a gap there. I don't understand that based on the fact that council can set the charges and should be charging customers a fee to cover the operational and capital costs to run the service. I also don't understand why there's such a backlog of upgrades and maintenance that is unfunded. I guess due to the administration's focus on selling the water assets and thereby not worrying about setting the maintenance budget. If you travel down the user pays path, the broader ratepayer base should not be financially impacted by the provision of this essential service. But I do draw a line if there's an expectation current customers have a responsibility to fund any expansions to this service through the removal of the rebate. I doubt there'd be an argument from customers to pay for the service. Unfortunately, at this stage, the state government's not interested in providing the essential service to the customers. And it's bad luck that the council have been locked into a fairly expensive contract with the service provider over a 25-year period. There's a strong community sentiment against removal of the rebate, particularly if you consider the SA Water annual charge for sewer rates based on a house value of $800,000, which is $490 for metro and $750 for country. There's also strong community resentment about how we're going about doing this. We've been presented with petitions and the deputation, as well as a number of emails and phone calls. This would be stronger if all the 4,500 customers were aware of what's going on here. This is the transparency piece and lack of community engagement with those most affected. The memo that was provided to us on this topic last week was very helpful in clarifying to elected members regarding the management of potential surpluses, deficits generated by the operations. But again, this is the transparency here. Where's the public information on that one? I think we owe it to the CWS customers to be a lot more transparent, educate them on the CWS service fees, and make publicly available an overview of how the finances will be detailed in the budget. I also believe it's important to note that if we do move into a full cost recovery and remove this rebate, the customers should not be exposed financially and they should be provided with certainty over who will underwrite any losses. I would support delaying the removal of the rebate until the next budget cycle to address these issues. I stress, I believe the customers should be charged appropriately, but let's go about this in the right way. I recognise the delay will most likely impact on the extent of the forecast surplus for next year, but nonetheless, in going down this path, we will have the benefit of growing community confidence in the council on this issue, and importantly, demonstrated we do listen to our community, and customers would also be better informed and prepared for any increase, particularly those on tight budgets. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Eaton. Question or debate?
No, bit of debate.
Thank you.
Certainly this is a very hard and important decision, and I listen to the community as well. But I'm also mindful that in 2017, ASCOSA recommended to the City of Onkaparinga to stop the rebate back then. Here we are in 2024 still discussing it. But at the time, of course, when the motion went to Council in November, we weren't aware of the recommendations of ASCOSA. Again, in respect to our financial unsustainability. We have to unfortunately make some very hard decisions, because the last thing I want to see is an administrator being appointed to the City of Onkaparinga, as they did a while back to a certain country local government area. So it's a very important decision to note. It's about our sustainability. It's about meeting those directions that we've really been given by ASCOSA and ensuring that we're representing all of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilkes, question or debate?
Debate, please. Go ahead. Okay. So, God, I've deliberated about this decision. Personally, I wish we could retain the rebate. I understand the community's concern, but I'm not here to vote with my personal views in the forefront. I'm here as a conduit for my community, the approximate 23,000 people that I represent. And this means that I have to stay true to them and be a conduit for them. And I currently have no members or residents on the CWMS system. I see it as my place to uphold the resolution that we passed when we decided to retain the asset. In order to clarify this, I feel like I should draw on the resolution and strongly uphold the decision that I support tonight. So the resolution that we passed was to immediately stop the divestment process and resolve to retain the water business unit and the community wastewater management system. And boy, did that feel good. That was something that people wanted. That was something that we saw deputations over. And that is something that was also had another caveat associated with it in the resolution, and that was that we'll do a transition plan for full cost recovery to be presented for consideration as part of the 2024-2025 budget process for the CWMS system, in line with the Essential Service Commissions of South Australia. Now, that is what this is. Now, I don't have any residents on the system. I have so many conversations with my residents about the system and we were going to retain the asset, and that is the common thread that came through. Well, are CWMS users going to start paying for the system without a rebate? Yes, I need to follow through with that. So I believe it's important to reiterate how fabulous it would be if SA Water would take the asset. That was also outlined in the resolution, and I believe this would be a great outcome for all involved. And that is a common thread that I've been seeing in the emails that have been coming as well. Unfortunately, SA Water needs to show an appetite for this, and we need to do our very best to make sure that they would like to take it on our asset. In the meantime, I cannot go past the fact that the current bank account for the CWMS system is being topped up with revenue from rates. The system is not paying for itself, and the contribution from users is not covering what the council's is for the asset. And when I discuss this with my community, they have expressed they no longer want to rebate the system. I have no CWMS users in my ward. In the last 5 years, residents paying their rates who are not on the CWMS have footed the bill for the system. To clarify this, I asked questions in the last meeting, the June 2024 meeting, to confirm the understanding that the system is drawing funds from the general rate revenue. These can be found on page 15 of the June council meeting minutes. Please know this is not you who is funding the surplus, but it's a range of decisions that will hopefully be made tonight. It's a sad but real truth that the system is not paying for itself, and often there are strings attached when you buy a property. My residents have an SA water sewage charge, and CWMS users have theirs. I'm happy if SA Water would take over this asset. It would be amazing. They've done it before at Teacher Gully, and I think we should urge them to do it again. Today, a $1.5 billion package was announced by the state government to help pay for $1.5 billion worth of new mains water and sewage connections to rapidly growing Adelaide suburbs. We were not included. Our current system was not included in that package, but new parts of our greenfield developments were. I believe that we really want to be again, asking SA Water to take on our system. In short, this news article that I read about the state government releasing the $1.5 million package, it said that our SA Water bills will increase by $80 each year. That is going to come in effect from July, and that will affect main sewage users. So that is the bill my residents will face. So please know it's not my personal opinion to remove the rebate, but it's the best interest of my community who no longer wish to top up the system. And I would like to see
time happen. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor June, question or debate?
Debate, thank you. Go ahead. I'd like to acknowledge the Maslin Beach Community Association, who mobilised their community, Kirsty and Scott from Maslin's, John Houlihan for his ongoing advocacy, and also Hazel Kane from Sellex Beach. Councillor Yeomans and I both work together to ensure those affected were aware of this decision that we're making tonight. And I think each of the groups for advocacy, finding opportunities for elected members to hear directly from community, and to those who door knocked for the petitions. An increase of rates and an increase, a removal of the rebate is a double blow for those residents on CWMS. Today, the state government, as Councillor Wiltz just highlighted, announced the need for a $1.5 billion investment in the mains water and sewage for connections for new houses. Rather than just ask the new homeowners affected, they distributed the cost across all SA Water customers. Community members believe that the broader ratepayer base sharing the cost of CWMS promotes equity and fairness, which is one of our long-term financial principles. With this in mind, and with what you've heard from us on in relation to this motion, I really hope that through listening to community, you won't support this motion tonight.
Any further questions? Debate. I'll put the note. Councillor Fisher, do you wish to close?
No, thank you, Mayor.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. Certainly, Councillor Yeoman's called for a division. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please stand. So we have Councillor Wilkes, Fisher, Bell, Davis, Eaton, Stafford. Thank you. And all those against, please stand. Femiolotis, Jew, Yeomans. Motion's carried. Thank you. And if I could ask one of the staff to invite the other members back in. I'll just wait till they come back. Because I just want to do a little preamble for item 2.2 so that we can meet our legislative requirements for that. So we're up to item 2.2. So there are a number of recommendations. There's 13 altogether. What we'll do is to meet our legislative requirements, we're going to take them in sets. The first set is motions 1 to 4. Second is recommendation 5. Set 3 is recommendation 6 to 8. Set 4 is number 9 and set 5 is 10 to 13. You also received in your packs an update, which is you're in your yellow folders. It was also emailed to you with the numbers for items 9, 10 and 11. And they're also up on the screen. So I'm just making sure you've got all of the information that you need. Councillor Platten, are you moving the first set?
Yes, I'm happy to move 1 to 4 as written.
Thank you very much. Do you wish to speak to that motion?
Not at the moment.
Okay. Councillor Greaves, are you seconding that?
Thank you, seconding it.
Any questions? Debate? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Motion's carried. Call for a division. All those in favour, would you please stand? I'll take it from this side. Councillor Platten, Stafford, Eaton, Davis, Pritchard, Greaves, Yeomans, Bell, Fisher, Jew. Against, please stand. Lotus, Wilkes. Motion's carried. The next set, Councillor Platten.
That is written.
So this is recommendation number 5.
Yes.
Do you wish to speak to the motion?
Not at this moment.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Eaton.
I'll second it. No, I'd have to say.
Any questions? Councillor Lotus.
We're going to debate. Now that's broken up, I'm trying to work out when the best time to debate is, so I'm just going to pick now. Okay. Elected members, I want to express my firm opposition against the proposed 6.8% rate increase, which is 2% above CPI. This decision impacts every resident in our community, and it's our duty to ensure that any increase is justified and beneficial for our community. Unfortunately, I don't believe the proposed meets the standard. What our residents are getting in return for this rate rise is not what they expect. We're not experiencing improvement in services. Instead, we're not enhancing community services, and we're witnessing a reduction in services for our sporting clubs, which is vital for our youth in our community. And we're seeing cuts to our court sports or increased cost to our court sports, which is meant game, set and match for them. Our green organic drop-off is an essential service for maintaining our environment and bushfire risk areas, and this is being reduced. In my community, there was a lot of anger on this particular issue. The mattress removal, considered by our community as a basic waste management service, is facing cutbacks. Now, how can we justify asking our residents to pay more while offering them less? This has been the sentiment of my community this whole budget process. And I've tried through this process to explain our budget and our position, and the commentary has been the same. We also have to consider whether a rate rise is helping us manage our debt more and more effectively. Unfortunately, it's not. Our debt continues to grow. We're not seeing any significant efforts to reduce it. Increasing rates without addressing the underlying debt issue is not a sustainable financial strategy. It merely places a heavier burden on our residents without providing a clear path to financial stability. I've had to ask myself a lot of questions throughout this process, and I had to ask myself if I've truly explored all possible internal savings before resorting to a rate increase. Am I satisfied that I've found every possible savings measure? Am I satisfied that I've seen and scrutinised every element of this budget? I don't believe so. It is our responsibility to ensure that we're operating efficiently as possible. And before we ask residents to contribute more of their hard-earned money. Lastly, let's not forget that we failed to meet our long-term financial plan targets. The previous chamber was 3 million, and this chamber is 1 million from the sale of surplus assets or surplus land. We've had a workshop, and since that time, nothing. This target was set as part of the strategy to manage our assets more effectively and generate revenue without increasing rates. Our failure to meet this target only adds to the need for better financial planning and management and not for placing additional strain on our residents. I urge my fellow elected members to reconsider the proposed rate rise. I'm asking our residents to pay more while offering less is not the answer. Let's work together and find a more equitable and sustainable solution for our community. Thank you.
Councillor Yeomans.
Just a question, if I can. Page 19, it's sort of something I picked up, I'll be misreading this. Page 19, it talks about in line with council's commitment to budget repair, returning and operating surplus and principles of the long-term financial plan, including addressing the structural deficit position. Rate revenue has been held at an increase of 6.8% plus revenue from new properties. And then you go to page 18 and it talks about the CPI for Adelaide was updated to 4.3%, but we were thinking of initially 4.8%. So my question on that is, I might be wrong, I might miss my memory jog, but I thought we decided an increase of CPI plus 2%. If we're going to go to this 6.8%, it's CPI plus 2.5%. So when did we change that, please?
So through the initial calculations, as we said, were based on the December CPI of 4.8% plus 2%. And through our workshops, there was sentiment that agreed with holding the rate increase at 6.8% and not adjusting it for CPI as of March.
Yeah, so it was the modelling that we did together in at the end of the year, on the December quarter data.
Sorry, just a follow-up question.
Yes, sorry.
If I can just qualify that, I thought we agreed that it was CPI plus 2%, and at the time it was 4.8. I get that,
yeah.
But now it's been adjusted to 4.3. So I would have thought it'd be more like 6.3 than 6.8. So that's just my question. If I'll be standing corrected, but I thought we agreed it would be CPI plus 2%.
Through the mayor, like the numbers you're right, we went out to the budget with 6.8%. CPI has moved since that point in time. When we shared the feedback with the local members around community feedback on all of the various options, there was an option to have a look at that. At that point in time, there wasn't feedback to adjust the CPI, to adjust it from 6.8, and we retained it at 6.8 as presented in the budget.
Any further questions? Debate? Councillor Patton, do you wish to comment? To close debate? No. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? Councillor Wilkes, which way are you voting? In favour, thank you. The motion's carried. The next set is items 6 to 8. Councillor Platten.
Happy to move as written.
Thank you. Councillor Greaves.
Thank you. I'm happy to second as written. Thank you.
Did you wish to debate? No. Any questions? Councillor Yeomans.
Yeah, just some debate.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah. We're in considerable debt and return deficit budgets for a number of consecutive years simply because we've been spending more than we have. The COVID period is a good example where rates should have lifted 3.8% over those years to allow for CPI and growth. This created nearly $6 million in lost revenue. I'm not critical of the elected members at that time for making that decision to provide financial relief to our ratepayers, but unfortunately for our finances, council still maintained the same level of spending without adjusting the budget to reflect a reduction in rate revenue. This simply increased our debt. This year, there's been inroads to reducing expenditure, including management holding off staff positions and managing vacancies, and reducing the directorship from 5 to 4. This is very pleasing to see, and more restructures may be required to align with delivering our services more efficiently. However, the most impact on delivering the surplus is the intended rate rise that includes the CPI plus, I've got 2%, it's actually 2.5%, and the removal of the rebate, generating approximately $4.5 million. Without that, we'd be forecasting another deficit budget. The debt's ballooned since 2008 from $23 million to the 30 June 25 forecast of over $125 million. That will take some time to recover. We need to focus on reducing expenditure. There's no point charging ratepayers more money if we're just going to do the same thing from an operational perspective. We need to look inside the operations of this council and identify opportunities for greater efficiencies, work smarter and review the services we're delivering. It's time to realign our priorities and get back to basics and do what the broader community expects from our council, including maintaining roads and footpaths, and look to cut costs where we can to review our service levels relating to playgrounds and footpaths, to name a couple. We must continue our advocacy to state and federal governments. This is aligned to the article in the paper that was referred to earlier regarding state government increasing our water and sewage infrastructure for new housing developments. It's obviously there will be a focus on the north of Adelaide, but we need financial assistance if we are to increase our housing stocks in the south. And I just want to quickly remind you of the memo that the ARC sent to this chamber in relation to the draft 24-25 budget, and I just read in part. The ARC notes the advice received from management that by returning to surplus in 24-25, future revenue increases can return to being aligned just to CPI, plus rates from new properties. It therefore anticipates that rate increases in 24-25 and beyond will be in line with CPI. The ARC expects that a failure to maintain surpluses while keeping future rate increases in line with CPI will need to be met not only by additional rate rises, but expenditure reductions. It recognises that this may mean a cut in services. However, the ARC considers that the present financial position does not allow for compromise on the commitment to running future surpluses. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dew, question or debate? Debate, thank you. I think we're all aware of the cost of living issues, and I think each of us tonight are also affected by them. The challenge to me has been how people in our community often want the same level of service, yet they want a reduction in rates, and this just isn't possible. I feel like as a chamber, we did set the scope for staff to go out and look for opportunities to raise revenue and also to generate income. Unfortunately, we're still here with rates and a reliance on grants. However, there has been a lot of work going on behind the scenes by elected members, but a huge amount by staff to really look at opportunities. I feel like the responsibility was that we set staff away with the scope for savings. And we might not like to make hard decisions because they are really hard, but ultimately staff have found what has been requested of them. The hardest part is different sections of our community have different interests. Green waste, footpaths, volunteering on our beaches, main streets. It's simply not possible to please everyone. To me, this is one of the greatest challenges of our role as elected members. The light that I see at the end of the tunnel is that this is not for a fixed term. This doesn't mean that we can't reevaluate at the end of the 12 months and think about what services we can bring back and what are other opportunities going forward and what are cost savings within the organisation. This is a 12-month budget. In line with that, what I'm struck by is that our community plan is a 10-year plan, yet we create 12-monthly budgets. And what I would really like to see is the strategies and the emphasis on how we're going to get out of this mess over a longer term period, rather than just a reactive, it quite feels at times quite reactive response to the development of the budget. Instead, I would like to see where we're heading and where the ship is turning. I'd also like to see a greater emphasis on capacity building with our communities. It really doesn't sit right to me that we're pausing grants for 12 months, and I understand that that's what has to happen. However, so many of our organisations and non-for-profits rely on our grants program, and our role as community, as a council, should be on building capacity and building self-sufficiency and not reliance. And it feels to me like we're kind of ripping that out from our community. I know that we have amazing teams that will support them to find other opportunities, but I'd really love for us to emphasise, hopefully it will be picked up in the community plan, the importance of building capacity. So yes, this budget's hard, but we need to get council on track. Our community wanted us to make tough decisions, and tonight is another time that we'll have to dig deep and do that. So I will be supporting the budget.
Councillor Bell. Councillor Drew, can you just turn off your microphone? Councillor Bell.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just a debate, if I may. This budget is a bold measure, a budget with a bold approach focused on budget repair. I do repair, and I support obviously this motion. It was a difficult decision, but it's an important decision, and it positions us in a more financially stronger position into the future. It ensures that we continue to be meeting the needs of our community. It demonstrates our commitment, the commitment of staff, management who provide a wide range of budget efficiencies and revenue measures for us to consider. I wish to reassure the community that we have worked hard and we have worked as a team and we worked collaboratively with their interests in mind. It's important that we to note that this has taken more than 8 months. We have participated in many elected member sessions, many workshops, reviewed data, analysed, questioned again, received and analysed more data, and this has helped us to make decisions, informed our decision. And as well as that, of course, we listened to our community. We ensured that we brought in their voices, particularly following what we did with going out to the community in preparation for the community plan that sought to inform us with these decisions. We have ensured that we've also looked at meeting our legislative requirements, the Local Government Act, advice from SCOSA, the Audit and Risk Committee. It's important to acknowledge all of those in making these decisions. I'm confident that our financial, operational commitments and goals will be met and are on track. Thank you.
Councillor Thimiolotis.
Yeah, just some quick debate. Thank you. Thank you, elected members, for the debate around the chamber. There's some quite aggressive campaigns held in my particular ward by certain members, and a lot of the sentiments were how out of touch Thalassa ward councillors were with their community in this budget going out. And to the best of my ability, I tried to explain the budget and encourage people to take part in the engagement. And I'm reminded that we're legislated to do the engagement with our community and get feedback from our community. We've had some overwhelming feedback from our community, nearly 1,000 people providing their feedback. And that's really significant, because when I first got onto council, it was around 20 to 40 people, and you'd be lucky to have one person show up to the chamber. So 1,000 is quite significant. And then I think, well, we are legislated to engage with our community, and we do that step, tick. And then when we hear that feedback and the feedback is resounding that they're not supportive of the budget, then we need to take some action on that, because you don't just engage for the sake of engaging. Throughout this process, I stuck to a CPI rate increase, and right at the last kicker, right at the end, I went out to our community and engaged above CPI. And the reason why I engaged above CPI is because I wanted our community to understand the position of council and receive feedback on that. And I talked about getting in the black, like all the standard lines, and I was listing them off like anything. And I can tell you right now, hearing back from my community, they weren't telling me, oh, Councillor Thimiolotis, it'd be great if you guys get back into the black. It'd be great if you, the push to actually do it straight away was not there. There was just concern around what our residents felt were core services. It was concern around the things that our community utilise. It was concern around this council not being able to deliver on programs and services that our community know and love. And then I had further concern with our community plan, because we're subsequently, doing some engagement on our community plan. And for me, the community plan is like going out to our community and asking for a bit of a wish list of what do you want to see? What can we give you? But I can't give you anything. You can tell me your wishes, but the position of councillors, I can't give you anything. So I'm really struggling with saying, I'm going to take this from you now, but hey, we've got a community plan. I understand this decision is hard, and I've been telling my community this decision is hard too. And my community have been telling me, well, guess what? I'll be sitting around my table with my family making really hard decisions too when these rates arrive, just as we do when the gas arrives and other bills arrive. There's some hard decisions being made around the tables in our council. One thing I don't see, and one thing I need to see out of all of this is a pathway forward. A pathway forward where there is no reliance or reduced reliance on rates and financial stability. This council, 80% of our income, or even 90% of our income, is rates and grants. And I'm not confident that I see any pathway forward out of this. Elected members, I understand how tough this is, but I'm sticking to my guns that I have through this whole process. And because this rate is above CPI, I will not be supporting the budget. But I do appreciate all the feedback from our community and the debate around the chamber.
Councillor Pritchard. Question or debate?
Just quick debate. Thank you. I just wanted to focus my debate around the servicing debt costs. So the current number for next year is $6.8 million of interest charges that we're going to incur on our debt. So that is money that we can't put towards services. It's money we can't put towards the community. So just to reiterate Councillor Yeoman's commentary around that debt position, we need to really look at that. And I think that's really why we need to get back into the surplus. Having this extra 0.5% on there, I agree with Councillor Yeomans. I was under the impression it was CPI +2. But I think that if this is to go through, then that's the first step for that extra 0.5%. It has to be in looking at ways to reduce that debt number. We all agree that there are so many services that we want to deliver, but we need to understand what does ratepayers want their money to go towards, and if it is to get back to those basic services of footpaths and street sweeping and sporting clubs and parks and reserves, and we need to really have a good look at how many of those we have, because we can't maintain them all to the level that we want. And I think the way that we're going to reduce our service costs is to have less assets ultimately down the line. So I think, just to reiterate that idea that our debt servicing number is $6.8 million, and that's $2.1 million worse than it is this year.
Thank you. Councillor Wilkes. Question, debate?
Sorry, I asked all my questions. Debate, please.
Go ahead.
Okay, I personally can't go past the fact that this is the first budget in 7 years to produce a surplus, $3.5 million. I believe it's got a clear line of sight and the modelling that shows into the future. And while we keep hearing this is a budget repair, and writing the wrongs of the past budgets, I think, the modelling shows that into the future, we keep hearing it's a budget repair, and it's writing the past of budgets that lack potential growth and community development. I see this as a budget for the future. Our budget that starts to move us in the right direction of reducing debit and financial instability. It has a clear line of sight, and I hope this can continue in our time in council. I'm a planner, and I have realised the community love to see where their rates are going and the CWMS fees and all of the little buckets that we have. And I really hope that we can keep doing this as a council. Personally, I hope we can deliver a new one next year that helps our sporting clubs. This is a budget that starts to give us options based on real figures and a surplus, not selling off assets and trying to make amends as our recent predecessors have done. This budget holds new processes that reflects our new CEO and the dedication of the new EMs that surround us. And maybe we're not considered new as such anymore, but this really is our first, except for you, Councillor Davis. But this really is the first budget that we've been able to influence. I mean, last year when we passed it, that was a budget from our previous predecessors. The downfall in this budget is the CWMS. I know we made that decision now, but it's important to know that that was the flow-on effect of retaining the asset. When you're overspending, you have to cut down and reduce your outgoings, and that's what we've done, and that's what we've had to implement in this budget. I really hope The grants program is one that we need to look at. I urge staff to spend considerable time revamping the grant system, as we said we were going to do. We said we were going to come back with a refreshed program, something that aligned with our community, something that wasn't just the same people reapplying with their amazing grant writing skills. So I really urge the staff to do what they do best and put their head to the ground and work hard to make that a new program that we can be proud of. I spent some time and attention discussing around this budget, and I really want to do the community proud and deliver what is needed now so we have options into the future. I want to see toilets, clean streets, roads, books to borrow, clean parks, and everything else that we can offer as a council. I've spoken to the community in great detail about this budget. I've heard differing views quite often. One that really stuck with me was a fellow, I won't mention his name, but he said to me, Gretel, this is a tough pill that's needed. It's time to generate our own revenue and control it. He said, you guys need to take the bull by the horns and you need to start looking at your money and spending the time to make sure you're not spending more than what you are actually collecting. I said, thank you. We can continue down the line of slowly fixing the damage that the last 7 years of deficits have brought, or we can take this approach in our first year and start with a $3.5 million surplus. The future is in our hands. It's not going to happen with this budget, but a change is as good as a holiday, and a surplus of 3.5 million is a pretty good place to start. The surplus is a way forward, and it's a path that I want. It's a pathway forward that I want to deliver to my community on the first budget that I've had the chance to deliver.
Thank you. Councillor Greaves, a question only because you seconded. Okay, all right. Councillor Yeomans. Question for you as well.
Just a question, yeah. I've got the rules after 2 years.
Good, I'm glad you are. I'm still needing coaching up here.
Just in relation to the report timelines and deadlines, it's just a couple of quick questions that we can consider from staff. Can we consider issuing the CWMS service charge separately from the general rate notice, just for consideration? That would be great. And secondly, when the rate notices are sent out, can we please consider including some literature relating to the removal of the CWMS rebate, particularly for the CWMS customers, in the interest of community engagement, please? That'll be great.
Thank you, Councillor Yeomans. We can take that on notice, and it has been noted by the staff, and I'll follow that through too. Thank you. I'll put the motion. Sorry, does Councillor Platten wish to close?
Can I just ask a clarification for a question? A service debt, or the money that we need to service our debt in the next financial year is how much?
Do you want that clarified? Have you got that number there? That's okay. So the question's the service.
The interest that we're paying on.
Oh, the interest. Level. Sorry, I missed that. Go ahead.
So through the Mayor, the interest payable on our borrowings for next financial year is $6.8 million.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to speak to the motion. So
close it.
Close it.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry.
The time starts now, Councillor.
So, councillors, this has been a very long process for us, and we finally culminated on tonight. I don't think any of us sit here comfortable with asking for more money. In fact, I don't think anyone in the general public goes, yes, we're so excited about paying more rates. But we have spent money on a credit card that needs to be paid back. We've spent money on major projects. We spent money we don't have. And at the moment, we're not even spending money on things that we want. We're spending money on running an organisation that we don't have. Currently, our servicing of a debt is $6.8 million. $6.8 million that should be spent on our community. Now, if not now, then when? How far do we kick the can down the road? Because I tell you what, this community has had enough of high rate rises or no rate rises or some rate rises. They want clarity. And as a chamber, 70% changeover we had 2 years ago. And we came in with a vision. Well, I certainly came in with a vision. My vision was to change things, to set a direction so that our community knew where we were going. We weren't making decisions based on a whim. We were making decisions based on strong policy and strong commitment to that policy. Now, I'm firm of the belief we got a brand new spanking CEO. He's come in with a vision. And his vision is to try and separate us from rates. Unfortunately, we have this big cloud over us, which is debt. And we cannot do anything about it in deficit. So what we need to do is focus on the deficit. That's step one. Once we focus on the deficit, we can then start focusing on investments or divestments. We can start selling off some property that we don't use anymore. And I'm firmly happy to have that conversation. But this year's policy, this year's budget is really focused on how do we get somewhere so that we can move forward. So I urge you all to support it.
Thank you, Councillor. I will put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. And the division's been called. I'll ask all those who are for the motion to stand, please. We have Wilkes, Dew, Fisher, Bell, Yeomans, Greaves, Pritchard, Davis, Eaton, Stafford and Platten, and you can sit down, and those against, and Councillor Themialotis. The motion is still carried. The next set is item 9 alone. Councillor Platten.
Happy to move as written.
Thank you very much. Do you wish to speak?
No, thank you.
Councillor Greaves.
Thank you.
Seconding the motion. Any questions? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That motion is carried unanimously. The next set are 10 to 13. Councillor Platten.
Happy to move as written.
And do you wish to speak?
No, thank you.
And do I have a seconder? Councillor Greaves.
Thank you again for seconding.
Thank you. Any questions? Debate? All those in favour? Against? Motion's carried. Thank you, everyone. That concludes our meeting this evening. And I just want to acknowledge and thank the Chamber for all the great work, and particularly to the staff. This is no small thing that we've been engaged in, and as you heard in the debate, there's been a lot of input and a lot of analysis. And I also like to thank the gallery for joining us this evening as well. And thank you for your respectful attention.